We pay for things for our children like karate lessons and gymnastics. We view those as investments. You need to be viewing services for your child with special needs the same way.
And I will never forget sitting in Dr. Childers' office at UF Pediatrics when JJ was 4 and he got his diagnosis, and that man looked at John and I and said, 96% of parents that have a child with this many level of needs end up divorced.
I'm Lee Henderson, and I'm joined, as always, with Sherry. And this week, or this month, we also have a special guest, Corrine Johnson, who is a parent of a child in our programs, and she's going to be sharing some experience with us. This month, we're talking about the importance of services for your child, how important it is for you to reach out and get help. More often than not, when we get phone calls, it's a parent that's looking for care. So they need a place for their child to go so they can go to work and they know that they're safe and being taken care of. And that's important, but the services that come along with that are even more important. The care is really more icing on the cake. If you don't need the care, you still need the services. We pay for things for our children like karate lessons and gymnastics, or even tutoring like Sylvan Learning Center and things like that. We view those as investments. You need to be viewing services for your child with special needs the same way, because we're going to make an investment in them. We're going to help them find their full, true potential. And that takes time. That's not something you can do in a day. That takes time. And the more time we have, the better that's going to be. We're going to help them find their real choices in life. What do they want to do? Because we think that's important. It's an investment in your family, because we're not just here for the child. We're here for all of you. We're going to give you strategies to use at home to make life better there. And we get feedback for everything from they stayed in bed all night for the first time to we had a house full of family for the holidays, and normally that's a meltdown situation, but this year we were able to use coping skills and we got through it and it was great. So we're going to invest in that family as well. And more importantly, it's an investment for the future. It's a plan for where your child's going to go as they get older and transition into adulthood. I can't tell you how many times we get that phone call from that mom who was able to be a stay-at-home, and so she took care of everybody. And now they're calling and saying, he's 21, the school says he has to leave, what do we do now? And we're going to try to help him, but if we'd have been involved 5 or even 10 years ago, that plan would be in place. That would be smooth. You would know exactly what was going to happen. It would already be there. We even get calls from families sometimes where the child is in their 50s and mom's been taking care of them their whole life, and now mom can't do it anymore. Or even worse, mom isn't around anymore. Now what's going to happen? What's the plan for that child there? The good news is the state will step in. They'll have a place to live, but they're not going to take a lot of time in determining what they want or what their abilities are. They're going to find the first opening they can find, and they're going to stick them there. And then finally, what's the plan for even you young parents? We always think, we got time, we can do this later. You're not guaranteed tomorrow. You could wake up tomorrow being a single parent with a child with special needs, or even worse. What's the plan then? Who's going to advocate for your child then? We're going to help you set that in place. So I'll shut up now, and I'll let Corrine share some of her experiences with what it's like to have services. So thank you, Corrine, for being willing to join us. So what made you make that first call to us?
Well, I'll be honest, we had just moved back to Florida from Connecticut, and there's a lot of resources in the state of Connecticut. They have an astronomically great special education services there, and JJ went to a facility very similar to your facility the 2 years that we lived in Connecticut. And when we came back to Clay County, prior to living in Connecticut, we lived in Putnam County, and that's where JJ's journey started. We were involved with Early Steps. We had JJ at a specially designed school within the public school system down there that housed all of their special needs kids, and it was wonderful. When we moved back to Clay, it was not so wonderful. It was very confusing. we had to have JJ in school for 1 calendar year before we could even apply for a unique abilities scholarship. So when you come back here and you've not been a resident in the state of Florida, you just don't get the option to go and put your child into a specially designed program. You're forced basically to go to the public school to start and be on an IEP process. And it's very unfortunate that the schools don't work closer with facilities like you guys. It's almost a hidden gem. You kind of have to you kind of got to discover it on your own. I did a lot of Googling and called some resources and some advocates in Putnam County that I had as associates when we lived there. And that's how I originally found out about your facility. And that you had Free to Be Me there. And that was very similar to what we had in Connecticut, which is where JJ really needs to be. JJ is not a traditional 1, 2, 3 ABC child. He was on access points in the public school. We knew at a young age that he was going to be nonverbal most of his life. So we were very practical as parents, and we wanted him to have a foundation of life skills. I was more concerned that JJ got potty trained and that he could put on his own sneakers and be able to communicate with people other than mom and dad than I was that he knew how to identify his shapes and colors, if that makes sense from a mother's standpoint. And unfortunately, in a public school, they have their own program. Although our schools were designed to have life skills built into them, they are no longer fit in the curriculum. It's very rare to have life skills into your IEP. And if it is, it's like 30 minutes 2 times a week. And realistically, for a child like JJ, that's not going to be effective when we get to be 18. So that was my first stop, was finding you guys. It is just John and I in this world. We have a very small family. After my mother passed away, it became just John, Corrine, Sherry, and Lee. And I won't lie, without you guys, I probably would have ended up in the funny farm by now. And that's why facilities like Henderson Haven is so important, because you don't know. And I have parents that look at me and they're like, JJ's only 14. Why are you worried about transition services? Why are you doing all of these things now? Why did you take him to get a photo ID? Like, why are you doing this? He's still a child. Well, he is a child, but he's also almost to the age where if I don't have things in place, I don't have any rights once he turns 18. He's an adult. And it becomes a lot harder, and people don't realize that. And I've met so many other mothers along this journey that look at me and go, I wish I would have been a little more proactive like you're being right now, because my child's 19 and it's a mess. Right. And I'm thankful for Sherry and Lee, because they're the ones who have sat me down and said, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. Sherry must have wanted to beat me with a notebook several times, because she's like, you have to apply for APD. She probably said it to me 10 times 1 calendar year. And I think from a mom standpoint, that's a really tough pill to swallow. Admitting that you need help. We all try to be super mom. Admitting that you need help and that you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring is really tough. So after much resistance, I finally got my act together and started the process. And it's overwhelming. And I think that they don't plan well enough, and there's not really a whole lot of information out there. I mean, I work with special needs children at school in the public school setting, and these parents don't even know that APD exists. Right. And that to me is very sad, because like Lee said in the beginning, you don't know what tomorrow brings, and you don't want to get to you're 50 years old and nobody's there, and then the state makes the decisions for you. I'd much rather be planning now while my child's 14 and know that he's going to be placed in a place that we want him in, that we're comfortable, and we can still be a part of his life. He's still going to be our son. But if something happened tomorrow to mom and dad, it's not going to be his sister's burden, or the state's just not going to step in and do whatever they want to do with him. So
I think one of the things that we run into, you just said his sister's burden. We hear from families, well, his siblings going to do that.
I hear that a lot too in our community. I will not do that to my daughter, and I will tell you, that's a personal choice for me. I have a lot of people tell me that I'm crazy, that, you know, it's a family gathering, and Elizabeth is a great sister, but she is his sister. You know, I'll never forget the day that I came through the door and that little girl at 9 years old was helping him clean up and change his pants because he had made a mess of himself. And I said, Elizabeth, you could have came and got mommy. That's not your responsibility. And she said, but that's my brother. And that made my heart happy to know that we are a family and we do this together. But she's also watched me sit in my car and cry my eyes out because JJ sat down for 30 minutes on the floor and refused to get up and comply with going to school. And it derangled my whole morning. So this has been a big family process. And Elizabeth by any means would do anything. Her biggest concern with JJ transitioning is that we're giving him away. She's never going to see him again. And so we've had to get through those barriers with her to make her understand that JJ's never going away. He's always going to be your brother, regardless of where he is at. You're always going to be able to see him, be with him, do for him. However, look at what mom and dad go through on a daily basis. Look at what it's like to travel. Look at what it's like for everyday life, what it's like for mom and dad to have any alone time. I don't want you to have that life. We didn't ask for this. This is what God gave us, and we've dealt with it. But it is a lot. And I will never forget sitting in Dr. Childers' office at UF Pediatrics when JJ was 4 and he got his diagnosis. And that man looked at John and I and said, 96% of parents that have a child with this many level of needs end up divorced. So make time for you. Don't forget that JJ is his own human, but he's going to have his own adult life. And this is just a season. You have to make time for you. And if John and I didn't do that, we've been together for 16 years this year. We would not, and I wouldn't want to do it alone. I don't know how people are single parents that do it alone because they have a whole lot more strength than Mrs. Johnson has.
I can also tell you we've been doing this long enough that we've seen, first of all, personally, I don't think it's fair to expect a sibling to do that, just like you were saying. And I know there are people out there with family, that's what family's for, and I get that, and that's fine. But we also see that sometimes that's the plan, and then it doesn't work out because siblings married now and spouse says, whoa, I didn't sign up for this. Or they tried and it was just a lot harder than they thought it was going to be. So I don't think you can put all your eggs in that basket that we've got a sibling here, so we don't have to worry about it. It's all going to be taken care of.
I agree.
So you had to pull JJ out of our program for a little while for some personal issues. What did you learn from that?
So that was a very unique time in my life. I had been diagnosed with pituitary cancer, and I was going through treatments. And this was right around the time that COVID decided to make its appearance in our world. And because it's just John and I, what we ran into that fall, I was in treatment, and every time that we had a significant outbreak, the center would have to close. And I understood that because you guys have limited, faculty members, and you're working with children with a lot of fragile needs. And so I understood that. But it was at the same point where the public schools said, well, we're no longer going to close for outbreaks. We're just going to tell people to wear a mask and come to work, which to each his own. But I was going to go get treatment, and JJ was going to be able to go somewhere during the day, or I was going to be home with JJ because you guys were closed down and I was not going to have treatment. So that was the only reason why we chose to put him back to public school. Originally, it was supposed to only be through the end of the year for COVID to go and fly away and things to kind of come back to normal. And at that point, over the summer, I accepted a position at the school. And so it was JJ's last year there, and mom was working there. It just made perfect sense. He drove in with me. I got to see him every day. So we kept him there. Am I thankful for the time I had with him? Yes. Was it an absolute nightmare to put him back to you guys? 100%. We had some trouble in an IEP meeting, and his matrix service changed, and I didn't know. And so we fought for a good 6 months to get it corrected between Clay County and the Department of Education. And thankfully, you guys were very open-armed and took JJ back before we had all of this sorted out and figured out, and we got it corrected, but it was a nightmare. And that was the only reason why we left. It was purely a personal decision because we didn't have any help. And he could take the bus from home to school. I didn't have to transport him. And I knew that they weren't going to close, and I was going to be able to go and get treatment during the day. And that was really the only reason why we did it.
So what are some of the things that JJ has accomplished here that you weren't sure that you were told that he might not accomplish? Just
the biggest thing is I was told that JJ would never be potty trained, that he would never come out of pull-ups. And he was, it was Thanksgiving, the year that he came back to you guys, I do believe, that we got him fully out of pull-ups. And it was literally the week before Thanksgiving, and I was a nervous wreck because we were driving 10 hours over Thanksgiving break, and he wasn't going to be in a pull-up. And I was like, what are we going to do? We're going to have to stop every hour because he's going to look at me last minute and be like, pull over. And the next exit would be 10 miles down the road. So that was my biggest accomplishment. A lot of other things, trying new foods and just being a little more independent. His language, appropriate signing. JJ, when he came to you, he had his own little basic grunts and groans and signs. And that's great for somebody who spends any amount of time with him. You could spend a day with him and kind of figure out what he needed just by what he was kind of generalizing. But again, if you take mom and dad out of the picture and he's got to sign to somebody that has no idea and has not spent a minute around him and he needs help, he really needs to know how to do the appropriate sign for help, Right. A lot of that's his apraxia and his hands, and I'm thankful that he gets his therapy services with you guys, and I don't have to come pick him up and bring him to therapy sessions. Like that's a huge relief off of parents in its own, to be able to get all of his services there. Just different ideas about how to sleep through the night. And like I said, Sherry's been a saving grace to me. She has more knowledge. I'll call her or text her or email her with just random questions like, JJ's doing this, what should I do? Or do you have any suggestions? When he came home for the hurricanes, he comes home with a box of things that if the power goes out and he can't have his iPad, here's some things that he likes to do that you might not have at home. And that stuff is things that's the last thing I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about having shelf-stable milk and, the generator's got gas and we all have water. I'm not thinking about, is JJ going to be freaking out for 2 days because we have no power and he can't do anything but pick his fingers raw. So that's the stuff that has been great for me. Toileting definitely is the biggest thing that was on my to-do list, and a little more independence, learning to sign and being able to communicate with other people just than the people that he knows in his regular world. So it's made a big difference.
Okay.
Very cool. And you've been able to take some of those skills and pass on to other parents too, I've noticed.
I have. I'm actually working right now. One of my biggest missions is to advocate for our county. We should be able to tell people about your services. Like, for some reason, let's be honest, it's a money thing. every child in a public school is worth a dollar amount. And so if I'm telling people, hey, there's other programs available, there's other schools, I'm really taking funding from our school and trying to get it. But there are some children that, just like JJ, public school's not the most appropriate place for him. He thrives way better in a smaller setting and more routine. And the fact that he can go to you guys year round. We don't get off in May, at the end of May, and then have 11 weeks of inconsistency. JJ is a creature of habit. He wakes up, he does the same thing. He's got old man syndrome, I call it. It is the same thing every day. So, when the center's closed for a week, he'll get up and he'll look at me like, what are we doing? And I'm like, no, we're not going to school today. And he'll be like, yes, great. We don't have to go to school. Sherry's not going to make me work. But then we just want to be a couch potato. So when we go back to school and the day that it's time to go back to school, it's, no, I'm not going anywhere today. No, I'm staying right here in my recliner. And so, for him, a consistency is a huge thing. And I think a lot of children like JJ that have any kind of developmental disabilities, consistency is huge. They know what to expect. They don't like surprises. I always tell John, the first day of vacation's the hardest and the last day of vacation's the hardest. He enjoys going on vacation, loves going to the mountains, loves going to the snow, loves to travel. But the very first day being out of sync and the very last day getting back into normal is very hard for him. It's he's got to have consistency. That's why since he's been a baby, we've always had the same bedtime. Even at 14 now, we do the same routine every night when we get home. It's like clockwork. But it's the only thing I think that keeps us going every day. And not every day is easy, but we try our best to make sure that his life is consistent, because if he's not consistent, sometimes it can be very unpleasant for us.
So do you have any advice for other parents that are going through the same kind of journey you've gone through in fostering their independence or for their children? Do you have any advice for them?
It's okay to ask for help. And I think that a lot of parents are embarrassed, are confused. Disabilities is a huge umbrella, and there's a lot to this world, and it's overwhelming at times. I sat down when I first applied for services, and they wanted all of JJ's IEPs and all of his medical records. And I'll never forget bringing in stacks and stacks and stacks of paperwork to you going, I don't know what they want. And you're like, give them everything, overwhelm them, give them whatever you had. And, parents don't realize the things that they need to save. I saved all of it from when he was little. I had filing cabinets of medical reports, and I saved every IEP, and I printed them off the portal, and I saved them. And I'm thankful that I did, because I needed it, and a lot of parents, I think, are just overwhelmed. They don't understand what they need or the things that they need to do, and they don't know how to reach out and find help, and they don't even know where to start sometimes.
So the state doesn't make it easy for you to do that?
Not at all. Not at all. Do you know, when we had JJ, I said, well, what do I do? Like, I still have to go to work. Like, I still have to pay my bills. What am I supposed to do? Now, he was able, until he was about 5, to go to regular daycare, but he needed more one-to-one care, and he was still in pull-ups. And so at that point, kindergarten, first grade, they look at you and they're like, we can't house him. Like, we don't have the staffing to house him. And so finding somebody that offers like before and after school care, it'd be nice, like I said, if there was more of a seam partnership between facilities like you guys and the school to say, hey, if your kid doesn't qualify for YMCA, or they don't qualify for, kid care, whatever, Children's World, here are some facilities and options, or here are some resources for special needs kids in our community. Not just going into it blindly from a parent's point and Googling. Now if you guys have done such a great job with the branding of your company and the awareness and how involved you are in the community, that you can go to Google if you live in Clay County and search special needs facilities Orange Park, and you pop up number 1 on Google. And if you have common sense and click on it and go through, you put 2 and 2 together. But if you don't know what to search and you don't even know where to begin, and you go to your school and you're like, you guys are telling me that my child's disruptive, that we're not making any of his goals on his IEP. What are my options? And they just look at you in an IEP meeting like, because they can't really truly advocate for what the child needs best and be like, he needs a smaller facility. Here's some resources in our community, or there's so many things that you have as a wealth of knowledge that they would benefit to bridge, even to have you as a guest speaker at some of their sessions. Like, there's so many things that they could learn from you guys, and you could be such an advocate. And that is my hope in the future, that we can make more of a healthy bridge between school and disabled families, because I feel like there's just not enough communication and people don't know, and it's overwhelming and they don't know where to begin. They told John and I from a very early on, you make too much money, you don't qualify for any services, just get on a waiver list. And it's like 13 years long. It's a long time to wait for Medicaid. Right. It's a long time to wait for services. I'll never forget paying a mini fortune for surgery after surgery on his feet when he was younger. And it's hard. But if you're in a position where you're working and you're doing for your family, I at one point had an advocate look at me and go, well, you might be better off if your husband and you weren't together. And that's the realistic of it. And it's very sad. It really is. We're thankful and we waited out, and now we're starting to get services. Now we're on the waiver list. Now we're doing the things, but now we're also turning the corner to where he's 15. And now we're looking into, getting guardianship of him. And so what happens when he phases out at 21, and are we going to be able to get him into a group home facility if we can't get through and get him placed earlier than 21? What happens next? I know as long as you guys are here until he's 21, I'm okay. I know that I have the same outlook for the next, 5 to 6 years, that I'm okay. And I know that we'll have everything in place to do that. But like you said, parents will get to 21, and the day they turn 21, that's it. They're like, oh, sorry, you have no more school services. Now what do you do? And John and I have spoken about it, because even the day program, it isn't like before and after school. It's not all day like that. And so when you work 8 to 5, or you teach and I have to be to work at 7:30, and, I depend on being able to drop him off between 7 and 8 o'clock in the morning. It's the only way that I'm able to still go to work, and to tell a parent, so sorry, you have a disabled child, you can't go to work. That's crazy to me. Like, it shouldn't be that hard. The government shouldn't make it so hard. It shouldn't be a choice of your livelihood or the needs of your child. To me, that's just wrong.
Right. Gotcha.
So,
okay.
In short, you agree services are important.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And I literally would not be able to do what I do in life. I built hotels for 20 years, and I left that world in 21 because the world just changed a lot, and it was too hard for me going through my medical stuff. And I always wanted to be a teacher, but I would never have been able to go back to school and go back to working for a public sector and be able to work with kids if it weren't for having you guys and your facility open and being able to drop him off. And even over the summer, he comes all summer long, and I was able to take classes and do my schoolwork and not have him yelling at me from across the room because he needed something every 10 seconds. So, services are definitely needed, and not just only before and after school or the Free to Be Me program, just to have an advocate that knows how to navigate the world, because we don't have a clue as parents. You and Sherry are both parents. You both have been through this. You've been through this a whole lot longer than we have. You've navigated this world. And that's why I keep your business cards in my truck. And when I meet parents, or even now, I've learned the polite way to introduce you to parents that I deal with on a daily basis. And I'm like, why don't you email this woman, Sherry? She is wonderful. She'll answer any questions, And the first question they ask is, well, what's it going to cost me? It's not going to cost you anything to email her. And she's going to always give you the best advice and point you in the right direction. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, just that portion of what you do makes a big difference. The care is phenomenal. Your staff is great. Everybody that encounters my child is wonderful. You have great people in there, from the dogs to you guys and in between. We've always been very cared about. If I'm not there by 10 o'clock in the morning, Sherry's calling my cell phone. Are you okay? Is everything good? I'm like, yeah, we just overslept, or, I've got a paper I'm finishing, but he's coming. It's just me getting out the door late. That's important. Those little things, I think, makes you guys become family. And I tell people all the time, I would be lost in this world without you guys, 100%. And I wish the whole world knew about you. We just need a big old billboard on Blanding Boulevard. Got a special needs kid? Call Sherry. Sorry, I'm going to overwhelm you, Sherry.
Sounds like it.
Well, thank you so much for taking some time and being willing to share that with us.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else?
Thank you guys. You have been such a blessing to our family, and I can't express. I have laughed. I have cried. I have screamed. I have had a mental breakdown in the lobby with Sherry. All of it, it's a lot. And I think people who don't live this life have no idea how much it is. And I only have one. Thank the Lord. I only have one. I just have one JJ, and that is enough for me, But people have got to not be afraid to ask for help, because there are people out there in this world that will help you. And you guys are definitely those people. And the community should be so honored and blessed to have your services with us, because there's a lot of us that could not do it without you here.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Did you have something, Sherry?
Well, we just hope that people understand that what we do here is not just about the kids and adults who come through for our services, but we want people to know that Henderson Haven, we want to be that program that helps the whole family, not just the child, but the whole family. And we want to be able to teach families how to help other families. That's part of, I think, our legacy, so that maybe there can be more Henderson Haven type programs across the country, but especially here in Florida, where there are so few that do the whole package.
Absolutely.
And that will do it because it's the thing to do. We understand it as parents that have looked for services when we moved to Florida. We've seen that, we've had those struggles. We've walked in your shoes a little bit. We can't say we've walked in your exact shoes, but we have encountered those programs, and we want to be there for families. We want to be there to help their children be as independent as possible, and to keep families intact. Whatever those services need to look like, there is not a one size fits all. There are no boxes for any of us.
Absolutely.
And so I hope you know that you can always count on us, that we can be there for you, and we want to be able to help other families as well.
Well, I think it's great. And, I think it's about paying it forward. And that's why I share you guys with everybody, and I talk to everybody about you. my final project for school this year is literally to build a facility like yours in a different county. That's what I took on as my capstone project. I have a team of 5 adults, and we had to come up and open a business from start to finish. And when they asked for ideas, I said, you know what we don't have? We don't have a Henderson Haven anywhere else except for Orange Park, Florida. And they were like, a what? And so I just started sending them screenshots from your website. And, you know, when we did those videos over the summer with the services that you have, I started sending them the feeds from there. And I went to your YouTube channel and I sent them your YouTube channel. And the next morning, 2 of those ladies got on Zoom with me and they were in tears. They were like, we had no idea. We had no idea that something like this even existed, because we don't have special needs kids. And they were like, absolutely, this is a phenomenal mission. And my husband goes, well, maybe you're starting your future. Yeah. And I looked at him and I'm like, maybe you're crazy. And he goes, maybe JJ's legacy will live on when you're in your 50s, Corrine Johnson. And I was like, you know, you never know. I mean, at some point, Sherry and Lee are going to have to retire and go camping and go to Disney and live their best life. And I said, you just never know. But that's one of the best things about getting to know you guys and your family, is to just be able to pay it forward and to show people who don't know about our community. This is real. And there's a whole lot more JJs in this world that people realize. Yeah. And, you know, when I grew up, children that were disabled were almost hidden in the world. You know, and I grew up in the 80s, and in school, you didn't see kids like JJ and some of the kids that we have at the center. You didn't see them. They weren't just in public school. They didn't eat in the lunchroom with you. It was very hidden. And as the world has evolved and we have more and more and more disabled children being born year after year than ever before, now you see it, you know. And that's why we try to maintain as much of a normal life with JJ as possible. We try to take him out. We go do things. He loves to go bowling. He likes, you know, to go to the playground. And we just make people aware when they ask, you know. And sometimes people just are scared of the unknown, so they don't ask. They just kind of look at you a little differently, and that's okay. But if they don't know, they'll never know. And so that was my goal this year, was to just kind of spread the knowledge to people that it's okay. It's okay to ask. It's okay to ask for help, and to know that you're not alone. I thought for many years that I had the worst case scenario ever in the world. And until I started working in school and seeing more children with disabilities, I realized that my child may be a handful, but he's definitely not. I don't have the worst case in the world. I'm very thankful for the things that he can do, because it could be a whole lot different. So I think paying it forward is important. And the more people know, the more that they're going to reach out and ask for help. And I'm thankful that you guys are there to help people, that even if they don't come to your center, you're there to help. And, you know, somebody can just walk in and ask questions, and they're greeted with a smile. And we understand. We've been there. We have children with disabilities. We know what you're going through. And that, the first time I ever met you, Sherry, and you were like, this is my family. I've been through this. My heart was warm from that very second, because it's so much easier talking to somebody who understands than somebody looking at you that's never dealt with a disabled child, and they're like, it's going to be okay. No, you have no idea. Some days are not okay. Some days are just not okay. And I need you to know they're not okay, you know? And I get that from you guys, because you understand that not every day is a smile, and that's okay, because tomorrow's going to be a better day, you know? So,
very cool.
Thank you very much.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome.
So if anything that you've heard today has touched a nerve, give us a call. Click on that contact us button on our webpage. Advocacy services have always been free. They always will be. And we'll see you in about a month for another Butterfly.